yesterday we learned about our first data structure, the array. Right? The array essentially is the concept of a list. It's a list of items. A hash is another kind of data structure that is also a list, but instead of a list of single items, it's a list of items that belong in pairs. Let me demonstrate.
An example of that perhaps be, say, coordinates on an xy plane.
Yes, that would be a great example. I'm going to show you an example of a menu and its prices. So let's say I go to a fast food place. A hot dog, what does a hot dog cost these days? $1.50? $8? So you should start going to Kale's place. Hamburger, how much does that cost? Well, I guess it's going to be a difference. $12? Okay. Fries? Anybody? $4. Okay. I'll just get 5 hot dogs, please. So this is a hash. So it's a list, whereas an array is a list of single items, a hash is a list of items that belong in pairs. So again, just like in an array where each item is separated by a comma, in a hash, each pair is separated by a comma. The reason these pairs are associated with each other are to indicate that a hot dog costs $1.50, and a hamburger costs $12, and fries cost $4. So these pairs are associated with one another. So an array is great if you want to list like a shopping list, a list of single items. But a hash is great if you want a list of items that belong in pairs, like 2 pairs of information that are connected to each other. Let me show you another example. So we can make a dictionary where we'll have, I should have prepared for this example. So that's a good thing we can, a bug. The definition of bug is little slimy creature. And we can define book as thing you read with pages. This is a very descriptive dictionary. And blue is a color. Okay, so excuse my poor dictionary. But the point here is that a dictionary is another example of where you have a list of paired things. We have the word and its definition. It's a list of pairs. It's a list of food items and their prices. It's a list of words and their definitions. So it's like an array, but it's just a list of pairs that are connected rather than a list of individual items. Does this concept make sense? In some languages, by the way, like Python, they don't call this a hash. They actually call it a dictionary. That's what they call this data structure. In other languages, they call it hash tables or hash maps. In Ruby, they're called hashes. Any questions about this? Also note that with hashes, instead of using square braces to delineate them, we use these curly braces. Okay. Now let me actually show you the most common usage for a hash. A hash makes a great way to describe a person or an object. Forget person, scratch that. To describe an object. So we're going to say Joe. Joe his hair is black. His height is 5.8 inches. No, I don't know, 5.8 something. His weight is 180 pounds. His, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. His ears are 2. He has 2 ears. So a hash is a great way to describe something because it's pairing together an attribute and basically the value of that attribute. So Joe's hair is black. His height is 5'8". His weight is 180. His ears are 2. Does that make sense? So hashes are used for all different types of things. But this usage as a description for an object is probably its most common usage. But it could be great for a menu, could be great for a dictionary. Shane mentioned lat long, but I probably wouldn't use a hash alone just for that. I'd probably use something more complicated. Let's do my car, or not my car, but someone's car. So the make is a Honda, the model is an Accord, and the year that it was made in is 2006. Yeah?
Equal greater is just for readability.
Oh, sorry, I should have pointed that out. So every pair, so each pair as a unit is separated by a comma. But to divide the first item from the second item of the pair, we use this arrow called a hash rocket of all things. Yep, so that's just how you separate the 2 items of the pair. Now the arrows do indicate its forward-facing nature, meaning we pretty much go forward in all these examples, right? I wouldn't say Joe's black is hair, right? Or that my 2006 is year, right? Hashes usually go forward. So the make is a Honda, the model is an Accord, a bug is a little slimy creature, a hot dog costs $1.50. So you read it in the direction of that arrow.
Would it change things if, like, I just realized, like, I was putting quotation marks around all the numbers, like the 1.5 and the 12 and the 4?
Yeah, you could.
Like, is it
Whoops.
more work for you?
It's just a matter of what you want to do with these hashes in your code.
Okay.
So if I wanted to add Joe's height to someone else's height, it wouldn't work unless I converted it to a number first, because only then can you add the numbers together. So it really depends what you want. If you just want to view it, then it doesn't really matter. But if you want to do math with it, then you'll want those to be the numbers. Great question, yeah. Now, just to get some jargon out of the way, in every pair, the first item of a pair is called a key, and the second item is called a value. So let's take Joe. Hair is a key, and the value is black. Height is a key, and the value for that key is 5.8. The weight is the key, and 180 is the value. Ears is the key, and the value is 2. So that's just a definition. That's just how it's called. So that's what they decided to name these things, keys and values. So if I were to say this in a very jargony way, I would say a hash is a list of pairs of keys and values. But that doesn't really mean anything to anyone. So the way I like to say it is that a hash is a list of paired items that have associations with each other, which also might not mean much to someone. But hopefully these examples make it more sensible. Any other questions about this? Okay, now let me just show you a little bit more how to use hashes. So this is how you set up hashes. What if I had Joe, and I specifically wanted to look up his hair? So this is how you do it. If I run the code, it prints out black. So let's digest this. The first weird thing to point out is that we made a whole big stink about how arrays are used. We use square brackets to delineate arrays, and we use curly braces to delineate hashes. However, when you're looking up a value inside a hash, ironically, you use square brackets. If I were making a language, I would have made it that you use curly braces like so. However, that's simply not how Ruby was designed, based on arbitrary, I don't know what. So to look up, you can look up a value by its key. You cannot go in reverse, by the way. If I want to look up a value, I will not get its key. I get this thing called nil, which basically means non-existent. So this is another funny thing about hashes. It's one-directionalness. I can look up a key and get back its value, but not the reverse. So if I want to look up the definition for bug, that's how I do it. So there's nothing complex about this. This is just learning new sets of rules. A new data structure, and these are the rules of how you use it. One more rule. If I want to add a key value pair to an existing hash, let's say I wanted to add another detail about my car. There you go. How do you know? You see my car? So you do it like this. Again, using the square braces, the square brackets. And this looks very similar to setting a variable, right? We say something equals something. However, we're not setting a variable. What we're doing is we are establishing a new key value pair. We're saying add this key and this associated value to the hash. So actually, if I were now to print out the car hash, it would look like this. This key value has now been added to my hash. So it's a weird syntax, but it's not. It's very analogous to an array. Not to bring back bad memories, but if I had an array here that was empty, and I wanted to add something to it, we use the shovel, but I could also say I want the thing at index 0 to be 4. So this looks very similar to that. And similarly, if I want to look up an array, if I want to look up what's at array 0, that's what I do. So similarly, that's how you look up something in a hash. People get very confused by this until they use it a lot. It's confusing that we define a hash with curly braces, but then read and write to it with square brackets. If I wanted to make an empty hash, which is something you might do in some algorithms, just like we made an empty array for some of our algorithms and shoveled things into it, I mean, it would basically look like, empty hash is an empty set of curly braces. I could then, add things to it, which I have nothing meaningful to add to it, but and it wouldn't be empty anymore. But that was my variable, poor name from a variable.